These movies were so dark, some got banned from major theaters, others had studios give up on them completely, and one became famous after it already played on TV. These films show humanity at its absolute worst. You ready? Let's jump in. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Rewind X. The 90s had a serious problem with testing limits. During a golden age for psychological thrillers, some movies fell through the cracks while pushing past what people found acceptable and exploring the darkest parts of human behavior. This is our continued look at the darkest 90s thrillers, Part 3. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because we're about to dive into some seriously disturbing films. Let's go. Number 1. Red Rock West, 1993. Red Rock West has one of the strangest comeback stories in American film. John Dahl's neo-noir follows Nicolas Cage as a drifter who limps into a tiny Wyoming town looking for work and gets mistaken for a hitman. Dennis Hopper plays the actual hitman who shows up later, equally confused. Shot for approximately $7 million in Arizona during late 1991, the film should have been a modest theatrical success. Instead, the studio panicked because they had no idea how to market a film noir set in the modern West. Test screenings went poorly. Polygram gave up entirely and sold it directly to HBO, where it aired in the fall of 1993 and was then scheduled for video release in February 1994. That should have been the end of the story, but Bill Banning, who owned the Roxy Cinema in San Francisco, saw it at the Toronto Film Festival and became obsessed. He tracked down the rights holders and convinced them to let him show it at his single-screen theater in January 1994. It broke the venue's all-time box office record. So the film expanded to Los Angeles, then New York, becoming one of the only American releases to reach theaters after already airing on cable television. Sometimes a movie just refuses to die. Number 2. Rush, 1991. Rush arrived in 1991 with a very different mission. Director Lily Feeney Zanuck, fresh off producing the Best Picture winner Driving Miss Daisy, made her feature debut with this adaptation of Kim Wozencraft's autobiographical novel about undercover narcotics officers in 1970s Texas. Jennifer Jason Leigh and Jason Patric play cops who go deep into the drug underworld. Patrick reportedly injected himself on camera with saline and vitamins to capture authentic needlework. Lee spent extensive time interviewing addicts about the specific sensations of heroin use at different stages of a high. Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars and called it the most heartbreaking love story about addiction since The Panic in Needle Park. What made Rush stand out wasn't just the performances. Eric Clapton composed the score during what would become the most devastating period of his life. His 4-year-old son, Connor, died in March 1991 during production, and Clapton channeled that grief into music that would eventually yield Tears in Heaven. The song debuted through the Rush soundtrack before becoming one of the defining ballads of the decade. Number 3. Falling Down, 1993. Michael Douglas stars as William Foster, an unemployed defense worker who leaves his car in Los Angeles traffic jam one hot morning and just starts walking. What starts as a trip to reach his daughter's birthday party turns into a violent rampage across the city as he collects weapons and complaints at the same time. Joel Schumacher filmed the movie in the spring of 1992, and production got stopped by the Los Angeles riots that spring. Douglas later remembered watching the city burn from far away as they finished filming. When the movie came out in February 1993, it struck a nerve that audiences weren't totally comfortable with. But it made $8 million opening weekend, ranking number 1 at the box office for 2 weeks straight, and eventually bringing in $96 million worldwide. The Newsweek put Douglas on their cover with the headline, white male paranoia. Critics couldn't agree on what the film was even trying to say, and the argument never really ended. Audiences in 1993 saw a man pushed too far by a system that didn't care, while modern viewers increasingly see a picture of entitlement and radicalization. The film doesn't settle that tension, and they're both right. Number 4. Bad Lieutenant, 1992. Abel Ferrara's 1992 descent into hell follows Harvey Keitel as an unnamed New York cop who isn't just corrupt. He's actively destroying himself in real time. He snorts cocaine during crime scenes, smokes crack in his patrol car, bets everything he doesn't have on baseball games, and assaults teenagers he's pulled over for traffic violations. There's no redemption arc being set up, no moment where the script signals he might turn things around. Keitel reportedly stayed in character throughout the entire production, which was shot guerrilla style across the Bronx and Manhattan on roughly $1 million. Editor Anthony Redmond admitted in interviews that they rarely bothered with film permits. The result earned an NC-17 rating that the production never successfully appealed, which meant most major theater chains wouldn't touch it. The film's centerpiece involves the lieutenant weeping naked in a church, having a hallucinatory encounter with Christ after investigating the assault of a nun. It's simultaneously grotesque and somehow sincere in its depiction of a man so far gone that spiritual intervention feels like his last option. Number 5. Light Sleeper, 1992. Light Sleeper stars Willem Dafoe as a high-end drug delivery guy in his 40s, working the dying end of Manhattan's cocaine trade while keeping a diary and wondering if he's wasted his entire life. Paul Schrader had been circling the same character for nearly 2 decades. In 1976, he wrote Taxi Driver about a young man consumed by rage. In 1980, he directed American Gigolo about a narcissist in his 30s. By 1992, he was ready for the third act of what he called his Man in a Room series. Schrader financed the first 3 weeks of pre-production with his own money because no studio would commit. According to a 1992 Filmmaker magazine interview, every major financier passed on the script, even with Dafoe and Susan Sarandon attached. The film eventually scraped together about $5 million through foreign pre-sales and opened to just $46,000 in 3 theaters. But critics recognized something special, and Schrader himself has called it his most personal film. The lonely man who filled his diary with self-doubt would return decades later, transformed into the environmental terrorist of First Reformed. Number 6. 8mm, 1999. 8mm closed out the 90s by asking a question most studio films wouldn't dare touch. What if snuff films are real, and what happens to the person who has to find out? Andrew Kevin Walker, writing High Off 7, sold Columbia Pictures a script about a private investigator hired by a widow to determine whether a film showing her husband watching a young woman's murder is genuine. Joel Schumacher signed on to direct it after the Batman and Robin disaster, reportedly seeking something that would be considered career suicide. Nicolas Cage plays the investigator who descends into the underground world of Times Square peep shows and backroom producers, and the script doesn't offer him an exit strategy that leaves him whole. We said the original cut ran over 3 hours and required multiple rounds of editing to escape an NC-17 rating, which tells you how far into the darkness it went. James Gandolfini plays a sleazy porn producer, and with The Sopranos premiering just 1 month earlier, audiences were only beginning to understand his range. The film's lasting image is Cage standing in front of a wall of degradation, realizing he can't unsee what he's learned, and the story offers no comfort about whether that knowledge was worth it. Number 7. Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991. Before becoming America's sweetheart in the mid-90s, Julia Roberts took a sharp turn into domestic terror in Sleeping with the Enemy. She plays a woman trapped in a perfect Cape Cod prison, married to a man whose obsession with perfectly arranged towels is the least of her problems. Patrick Bergin, who plays the husband, reportedly refused to talk to Roberts between takes to build real tension. He later remembered that the two would sit quietly in the same room for half an hour before scenes, deliberately creating discomfort. Shot for $19 million during the spring of 1990 in Wilmington, North Carolina, the film opened in February 1991 and destroyed box office records, making $175 million worldwide and breaking the record for highest domestic opening with a female lead. Roger Ebert gave it just 1.5 stars, calling the promising first act a trick that turned into slasher movie cliches. But audiences strongly disagreed with critics, and the shot of Roberts noticing the straightened bathroom towels became one of the decade's most copied images. Number 8. Shallow Grave, 1994. Shallow Grave announced that British cinema had found a new voice, and it did so by making you hate everyone on screen. Danny Boyle made it in Glasgow during the summer of 1993, and the setup is brutally simple. 3 Edinburgh roommates discover their new flatmate dead with a suitcase full of cash. Keeping the money means cutting up the body and burying it in the woods. What follows is a study in how quickly greed destroys friendship when nobody involved is particularly likable to begin with. Ewan McGregor, in his first starring role, plays the morally flexible journalist. Christopher Eccleston plays the accountant who draws the short straw for the dismemberment and proceeds to lose his mind in the attic while the other two carry on downstairs. The movie won the BAFTA for Best British Film and made approximately $20 million worldwide, which was huge for a British indie at the time. It also launched the creative team that would reunite for Trainspotting 2 years later. In interviews included on the Criterion release, Boyle explained they wanted audiences to watch these people turn on each other without rooting for anyone's survival. They succeeded. Number 9. The Vanishing, 1993. The Vanishing is a remake from 1988 by Dutch filmmaker George Sluizer, who made the original to widespread acclaim. So when Hollywood came calling with a $20 million budget, Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland, he agreed to try again. What makes the movie so disturbing is its clinical approach to obsession. Sutherland plays a man whose girlfriend disappears at a rest stop, and his need to know what happened to her becomes all-consuming. Bridges plays the abductor with an eerie matter-of-factness, a chemistry teacher who planned the kidnapping with the same methodical precision he'd bring to a lab experiment. The film builds anxiety through the inevitability of 2 men on a collision course, one driven by grief and the other by a terrifying need to prove he can commit the perfect crime. Sluizer shot much of it in the Pacific Northwest, using vast empty highways and isolated rest stops to create a sense that help is always just far enough away. Critics were divided on whether the American version captured what made the original so powerful. But there's something deeply uncomfortable about watching a man willingly walk toward the answer to a question that might destroy him, and the movie commits to that discomfort without flinching. So there you have it. 9 of the darkest, most disturbing thrillers from the 1990s that pushed boundaries and made audiences seriously uncomfortable. These movies didn't hold back, and that's exactly what made them so memorable. Which one shocked you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten cinema, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Rewind X for more content like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I'll catch you in the next one.